Ted Saland, Juniper Networks. A little bit about myself. I've been in enablement for about 15 years in all different aspects of enablement. At Juniper Networks, I lead the technology team. Prior to that, I was in customer success for about 10 or so years. Prior to that, I was an HR leader for about 10 or so years, and then military before that. I'm responsible for all of the global enablement technology. So that includes Highspot as one of them, but yeah, of course there's a vast list of technology that we use for enablement. So my job is I have a team that supports all of the administrative aspects, all the content management, the governance, and all of the enablement program processes. Yeah, we have taken on the whole AI world so far. Juniper Networks already has its own AI functionality with our own products. So we've been really heavily involved in AI for the last 12 plus months. From an enablement perspective, we're very thankful that our platform already comes and is already building out more AI capabilities. We were looking outside to kind of solve some of our AI needs to make our sellers more efficient in what they do. Thankful for all of the wonderful AI Highspot has built into the platform. We took it upon that to use that in findability. So our focus is making sure our sellers have the right content at the right time at the moment they need it. And so our goal was to create what that could look like through integration and through AI. So our biggest issue was we had so much content, and there was so much content that wasn't labeled right, no descriptions, metadata was all a mess. And we used the AI of the platform to really enhance that ability and then help us shape what shows up for the customer and where. It was life-changing. We went from a findability time frame of a ratio from around, I guess around 8% to so, to now we're at 25% in findability. It has increased over 90% in time for them to get to the content they needed, which has been great. I should say decrease in time, really, but the sellers their feedback has been amazing with that capability. They love the search capability. We've included instant answers, which has been tremendous impact. The fact that also Highspot put instant answers in Salesforce, game changer. Now our sellers not only get to type in standard language to find what they're looking for, but we get to actually promote what we want in seeing what they're looking for. That has been also internally a game changer for us. We've been able to identify so much content that we didn't know they were looking for that we now put in front of them, an instantaneous moment of content availability. So there's a couple platforms involved, so it's not certainly just the Highspot, but we have Highspot for content. And so for our ability with that, we have to also align it with our LMS platform, which is not Highspot. But from a content structure perspective, we partner very closely with our LMS side of the house as well to make sure our sellers have not only the learnings associated with core competencies, but also the content that's related to that. So the first piece that we took upon ourselves was to look at what are the core competencies that a seller needs in order to make the deal, right? And as well as how do those core competencies relate to the sales stages themselves? And then finally, how do the other fields in Salesforce relate to those competencies and those sales stages? Once we were able to identify all of that, we were able to then take that content to a whole other level. It allowed us to put all of that content directly in the seller's hands at the time of opportunity, at the time they needed it, without them thinking about it. So now they're no longer asking for the information. They're not searching for Highspot for that content anymore. It pops right there in the opportunity. That coupled with the skills training and from an LMS side has been, changing the game for our sellers in the event that they no longer are spending all that time like in findability for that content. They've acquired the skills and now they're applying the skills to that content. It has provided them an ability to write the communication that provides the content in a much better way because they are better understanding of how that content is applied. So it's certainly been a combination, but from a Highspot perspective, it was a game changer for content for us. Enablement platform helps us drive success in, well, a few ways, but probably the biggest way I would say is just not being in the way, right? The more complex a platform is, the harder it is to manage, and the more likely we're not going to use it. And the more likely our sellers aren't going to use it. The brilliant part about Highspot for us is the simplicity. The UX is very simple. It's very intuitive. You don't have to be a tech wizard in order to create a page, and you don't have to be a content master in order to manage it. Enablement manager doesn't have to be, breadth of experience with enablement in order just to understand the concept of a content management system and how we're going to be using it. So in all of that facet, I think its top priority is just, again, not being in the way. The other parts I would say is the simplicity of integration. We integrate a lot. I am all about integration. I am a tech geek, all tech geek. I want simplicity of integration. I want it to be easy to set up, but I also want it to be easy to manage. Highspot has given me both of those in a very structured manner. I've appreciated the fact that the platform provides a structured process as well as, well, from a training perspective, things that are already laid out that I should be thinking about in advance. I love that because I get to then absorb that, see about what's best practice, see about what won't work, and then have an opportunity to talk with others through community to then wrap up, hey, what was your best practice? What did you lose? What didn't work for you? And it just allows for an easier implementation and an easier management of the platform. Those are the both critical aspects for me in any platform for success. You could do anything else. I mean, all the platforms have so many other features and functionality, but at the end of the day, when you roll it out, it's all about that UX, the simplicity of use. Let's just be really clear. I would not have renewed in Highspot last year if it wasn't for Jess, my CSM. There's just no way around it. She was the game changer. We had an account team before that. I inherited Highspot about 2 years ago. We already had it for a year and a half, almost 2 years. We used it to some ability. It was messy. We had about 10,000 pieces of content in there. It was a mess. When Jess and my AE, Paul, came on board, Jess's high-structured project management skills were top-notch. Probably one of the best CSMs I've ever worked with, and I've been in this business for many decades. That changed the game on what I was able to get accomplished. I had a laundry list of things that I really needed to do, and I knew those rungs of the ladders of what had to be done in order to get to where we needed to be. I knew the renewal was coming up in 10 months, this is last year, and I knew that I had to at least figure out what we were going to do or collapse platforms or what have you. Working with Jess, in the very beginning, I could tell her project management skills were strong. Her consultative aspects, though, of providing and knowing the platform, incredible. And I was able to take every single beginning phase, starting with the content governance restructuring, starting with the metadata, and then moving into all the integrations pieces. She guided me every step, gave me best practices, pulled in an SME when I needed to, and I don't stress at all about anything I pitch over to my CS. At all. I don't lose any sleep about Highspot. I don't lose any sleep about support issues. It just doesn't exist. I have that with my LMS. I have nothing with that in Highspot. My technical person, Halal, was critical for a lot of the things that we were in the middle of doing. We've not yet had to use him in the past couple months, and that's okay, but certainly heavily used him throughout all of 2024 and ending of 2023 to get us to where we needed to be. Integrations were critical. We were going through a whole Microsoft Azure rebuild of our integrations of the data coming into Highspot. That was very complex. He was critical in understanding that. He was able to take the technical jargon and dumb it down, if you will, for my admin and help really have that person really understand the majority of what was needed. And it was great. And my platform manager, Austin, has been great in working with this new team. Hats off to the services team. It was what changed the game for our renewal. So I would say probably a big challenge that we overcame recently, or somewhat recently, was, as I had said earlier, we were about 2 years ago when I came on board with Juniper Networks as the platform leader, we had a lot of challenges with our tech platforms. They were antiquated. They weren't at all being used the way they should have been used. To put it bluntly, our sellers referred to Highspot as the refrigerator magnet, because it's where they just had content stuck with a magnet, and that's where it was. And they would go and grab it, and download it, and use it, and that was that. And we found that people were emailing versions of what they downloaded from 5, 4, 3 years ago, and the newest versions have been on Highspot for quite some time. So there was a lack of, consistency of content. So when I came on board, this was a monstrous task to take on Highspot and to clean it up and to realize that no governance existed. Nothing existed, really. It was just people were dumping content in and building pages, and we had 90 admins on Highspot creating all the stuff they wanted to create any which way they wanted. It was a cluster. I've never seen anything like it. I wanted to, at that point, just drop my head and just not take care of that, because that's just too much. But I at least took a look under the hood, if you will, and I wanted desperately to get out of the mindset of a refrigerator magnet. The analogy just doesn't work for me, and when I'm spending money and managing something that value, it needs to be a value, and we need to take advantage of all its utilization. The problem was that was a huge hill to climb on what everything needed to be done. And my boss at the time was focused on a lot of other priorities because we were fairly new rebuilding Enablement. Our entire team at Juniper Networks, basically about 60% of the team left. So we had to rebuild the entire Enablement team. Doing that while also rebuilding all the platforms was a huge undertaking. Thankfully, I did have a boss that gave me basically my own runway. And he said, do whatever you want to do and just go, which was wonderful to hear. I don't like micromanaging. I don't micromanage people. I don't like to be micromanaged. And when I'm looking at everything that needs to be done, having to do those stop checks along the way, it just takes too much time. So the fact that I was able to get a full runway was great, but the pieces that we had to deal with in the sales leadership roles and the levels that we had to deal with certainly were their own undertaking because it had all its own work. We had to ask like marketing to give us a listing. We gave them all the content, but give us now all the metadata. Who's now the new owner? How long is this content in existence for? All of these elements was a large task. We send it out, nobody replies. Nobody has time. It's not their role. It's not their job. It's not. So all of this kind of turmoil along the way created this task to be double of time than what it needed to be. And again, I'm getting ready to hang it up and be done. It was just too much. But once again, the game change was once we got Jess as my CSM, it changed the game. We were able to finally put things into the proper packages the way they should have been. I'm coming in not knowing Highspot that much at the time. We used it when I was at DocuSign, but I wasn't part of the platform team. So it was really looking at, well, I don't know what I don't know. I have an admin and a manager that know it, but not anywhere near the detail I needed it to be. And they don't know what other customers are doing. So at that point, it's like, well, Jess, this is where we are, and I need some help because I didn't get it before, and I'm getting ready to be done. And that first SME she brought in, along with Haley, as the head of CS, was, again, another game changer. It got us perspective. We were on the phone with other customers. We were looking at what they were doing. We didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We had just so many different opportunities that made that overwhelming amount of work to be a lot less stressful and not as long as I thought it was going to be. And then once we hit it and we finished it and we rolled out that just-in-time content, that integrated content in the Salesforce, sellers immediately took back and went, holy moly, I can't believe that at opportunity level I have my content. We have this, we have that, I don't have to search for it. Even when I do search for something, it pops and I'm not getting content that's 4 years old. Once we got that, no longer do our sellers think of Highspot as a refrigerator magnet, which is really nice. They look at it as a spot to go for what I need. Advice for some folks with Highspot and even new. So for me, it's just about making sure that people have observance of what they have to take on in what that content structure is going to look like. And content for that is not just physical content, but it's also learning objects, right? It's learning content. For those that have the learning side and the content side, it's still the same fundamental of get your governance in order, develop your governance plan, get your data elements in order, your metadata of who owns the content, the dates of the content, how long its shelf life is, all of that key stuff. And then descriptions and all of those elements, understand that first. Because I know that that's what, for me, was the largest undertaking. And if I would have purchased Highspot from the beginning, and I would have started with that, my life today would be so different. We wouldn't have had to go through 10 months of redoing. It just would have been so much smoother. And today we would have, to be honest, we would have already collapsed my LMS and put it into Highspot last year. We just couldn't do both. We couldn't do it all. But that's the game changer, right? Like, so that's the, get in front of people that already did it. Don't reinvent the wheel. Understand, like, what were the best practices. And most importantly, I would say, is my advice is find out what did not work. That's the most critical. Find out what just did not work. Find out what somebody failed at, because that way you don't have to go through that. I was not a heavy community user when I first started at Juniper Networks with my first kind of undertaking of Highspot. When Jeff started introducing it, I still was kind of hemming and hawing to get out there. I felt like I didn't have the time. Like, I just don't have time to talk to 100 million different people out on a website or whatever it is. That has changed since I've been in it. I can find so much good stuff there, and that's where, again, you find out what didn't work, right? People are already posting out there that, oh, we tried this, or you get a lot of interaction, web-based interaction even, or what have you, but it is insightful, and I just didn't realize how insightful it was. Highspot is simplistic.